And so this ad we'll have to talk about as well. This on the back cover, which is my ad, but it's my logo isn't produced correctly in my ad. So,
well, how did that happen?
well, I don't know exactly how it happened.
Hello and welcome to Did I Do That? I've thrown my card away.
There's mistakes happening all over
Already,
the place.
What a rollicking start. Welcome to Did I Do That? I don't even remember if I said that part. It's a show about the mistakes that we make on the way to making graphic design because it's all part of the process. I'm Sean Schumacher, and joining me today, a very special guest, a legend of the Portland design scene. He co-founded Plazm magazine in 1991 and went on to run the award-winning creative studio Plazm Design, which has been listed as one of the 40 most influential design studios by ID magazine and has been nominated for the Cooper Hewitt National Design Award. He's worked with larger agencies, including Wieden & Kennedy and Liquid Agency, where he was brand content director. And he's worked with brands like Nike, MTV, Lucasfilm, and Fort George Brewery. It's Josh Berger. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I didn't throw my card this time.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. You are not normally in Portland these days.
Yeah, I don't live in the city full time. I live out in Sisters, and I come back regularly. I mean, my business partner is here. I come before the pandemic. It was once or twice a month. During the pandemic, it was not at all. And,
I think that's a good choice. Yeah,
and then and since the pandemic has, well, I don't want to say it's over because COVID is with us for a long time.
Yeah, it's like one of those clocks at Pizza Hut that tells you it's always time for pizza, and the hands just spin around and around.
Yeah.
If anyone has a hookup on one of those, I want it. I want one of those so bad.
Well, yeah, I don't know where to find one of those, but COVID does still it's always time for COVID.
It's
apparently.
Always time for COVID.
But I have come in about once a month.
For folks who don't know, Sisters is a really lovely mountain town.
Yes,
in the Cascades.
It's about 3 hours away from here. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah. Bend is pretty close-ish, sort of, to the center of the state, and Sisters is a little up from that.
About half hour from Bend.
Yeah. So, you got a lot of stuff going on, and
there's a lot more sun.
Really?
Well, yes.
I guess that is the drier side.
Yeah, well, it's amazing when I come back here and I could leave my house and it'd be 15 degrees and sunny and, it's cold.
Oh,
I have a coat, and then I come to Portland and it's 40 degrees and raining and it is colder here than, it just chills you to the bone having that water in the air.
You hit the nail on the head. Yeah. Humidity is the worst.
Yeah.
I'm a desert person and I cannot stand the humidity.
It always reminds me when I come back. I'm like, oh yeah, this.
There's just sort of a gas of misery in the air.
Well, I don't know if it's maybe I don't know. I don't know. It does increase depression, I'd say, for some.
Yeah, especially this last
vitamin D
winter where we didn't have sunlight. I feel like for 150 consecutive days.
Yeah,
that was
out, and you're like, "What's that giant orb in the sky?"
The sky's on fire.
Yeah,
that's definitely what it felt like around May.
So it's quieter. It's quieter and sunnier. It's nice.
It's
that space.
A very, very chill place. But you're kind of a legend of the Portland design scene. Not just kind of, really. Plazm is one of the, I feel like, the anchor points to when people talk about Portland design. That's what a lot of stuff in, I think, the legendary era of Portland was circulating around.
Well, it's nice to hear. We should talk about the early days, and some of the things I brought were about those early days because Portland wasn't, in 91, Portland wasn't the place where, let's say, one would think as a center of cultural or design
No.
happening. It wasn't that. So, nobody was platformed then either. I mean, this was before the internet era, right? I mean, some people had access to the internet, but it was basically a handful of scientists, and so most media was controlled by 5 corporations. You wouldn't necessarily know what was happening in one city versus another city, right? There's big protesting. So 91 was the first Gulf War. That's big protest in San Francisco, which, I drove to. I heard this thing was happening and go down there with a group of people, but you don't read about it in the local paper.
No.
In Portland, Oregon, right? So,
the Oregonian conservative as always.
Well, they report some things and they omit others, but the founding principles of Plazm really. One of my housemates at the time, Andrew McFarland's, I heard about this meeting. Let's go. And it was in what's now called the Pearl District. It wasn't the Pearl District then, but, there was a space there that a small 2-person design firm had, and called QED, and the person that called the meeting, Ruben Eisenfeld, was really the original spark, right, the catalyst. And so he was part of the early issues of Plazm. But I went to a meeting, and some people came and went, and some people came for one meeting. Some people stayed. I mean, I stayed for years, But and we didn't know what we were doing. It was like it wasn't a call to have a magazine. It was like a group of artists that were looking for avenues of expression that we couldn't find. So there was through these discussions in the early days, decided to make a magazine, right?
Really?
So there was a series of weekly meetings, and we were meeting there. We were also meeting at a place called the Last Thursday House, which I don't know. The Last Thursday House is up on Northwest 25th, but this was before Last Thursday was a thing. In fact, it's the progenitor of Last Thursday. Like it didn't exist. First Thursday was a thing, but Last Thursday was a house that a whole bunch of artists and creative people lived in. Like Mark Lakeman was one of the tenants of that place, and Neva Knott, the first editor of Plazm, was also lived there. And so we met also at the Last Thursday house periodically, but that was way before the whole scene on Alberta Street and that stuff. Yes. And
I had no idea. Like, I would never have guessed that there was like a physical place that was not even related to Alberta that was sort of the genesis of that.
Yeah, let me see. Well,
Josh is going into the box.
Yeah, I have some early stuff here. There's a box. Nico and I did a talk at Kate's class one time, and we brought this box of Plazm, which is in the PSU library.
Yeah.
But it doesn't contain a few early things. It doesn't contain every issue. But I brought Plazm #1 here, and which I'm going to give to you to add to this box. And here's an old flyer. We didn't know what to call Plazm, and this is the one and only flyer for Drug magazine. I suggested Drug magazine.
I should also note it's written here as Drug magazine.
Well, yes, there are a bunch of things in this issue, like we were calling it magazine and magazine, but there's some, like even within the issue of Plazm, there's some, like on the cover it's spelled with a Z, but other places it's spelled with an S. Yeah, so there's some
kind of medieval spelling fluidity.
Trying to find. I have some other early stuff that I was going to bring, or that I did bring to add to this box, and one of the early things is this flyer. It's a benefit dinner for Plazm magazine, spelled with an S, at the Last Thursday house.
Wow.
And there's the exact address.
Is this before?
That's before
Like,
That's before the magazine came out. Yeah.
Wow.
And this also is before the magazine came out from Inverarity Media Foundation. This was what Ruben had started, and Inverarity is an organization designed to provide a foundation and framework for the creation of works in single and multimedia formats by publishing Portland's only no-fee artist directory. Inverarity provides a networking center for art. And then it goes on through the production of video, music, and print compilations. In addition to sponsoring varied performances, group showings, Inverarity will become the catalyst for a new movement that merges creative expression with commercial viability and social awareness. There's a bunch of stuff, and it's interesting to look back on these kinds of things because there was a statement in some of these early documents, quality and conscience overall, right? This was, and that's from 1991. That's holds true today.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
That's still a principle that we operate by.
And it's still such a unique principle, I feel like.
Here's another early flyer. That one has an S.
Oh, yeah. This is lovely. I want to describe some of these for the listeners because these are so cool. Oh my God. This is gorgeous.
Some of these I posted, actually, our Instagram account was hacked, and I recently started reposting things. So some of these early images can be found on that.
Oh, yes. Whatever. I will absolutely share a link.
So you could see some of these things.
Yeah, because, I mean, the Drug Magazine, magazine, I should say, this is it is a collage. I think is it entirely paste up like collage?
It is a collage, and the collage was this woman, Donna Martin, made the collage, and I designed the poster. So I did all the I printed out the type and cut it up and assembled it on top of there. But Donna was a friend of Ruben's, and I met her at one time. There's like one time at actually pretty near to here where he was living, and she handed me the collage, and I assembled it.
So you didn't even you added all the type elements.
Yeah, she made a collage, and I added things to it.
Yeah.
And I used some of the elements of the collage on other things as well, another poster or something.
What it says on here, the creation of a new form of media, drug, beyond the constraints of a single medium, ideology, or individual. Gonzo journalism, guerrilla fiction, spontaneous layout, Xerox art, cut-ups, open forums, information sampling, media scans, idea propagation, and fornication. Ooh. Unnatural art, censored realities, taboos, evolving aesthetics, head launchings, pictorial infodramas, cartoon propaganda, and further. Are you interested in participating in the production of this publication? Contact Ruben. Was this
no area code on the phone number?
No,
notice.
This is.
You don't need an area code in those days in Portland, Oregon, or anywhere in Oregon. It's all one area code.
Oh, before
503 is OG. Yeah.
Wow. But were these hung up on like telephone poles and stuff?
I think some of them probably were and handed out, but it's I'm not sure how far that got distributed because it didn't end up being the name.
Yeah. Is this the only drug magazine?
That's the only one. And then this other flyer with the S,
which is
so once we decided on the name, we decided to actually print this thing in 2-color.
Yeah.
And so this was probably one of the first prior to the magazine, one of the first flyers. This was also an early call to submit poster.
Oh my gosh.
So part of our idea with this, with the magazine, was to create this space really where anything could happen. And so we wanted it to be an open submissions format where artists represent other artists, and that it wasn't controlled by some other financial interest.
You're not beholden to advertisers.
Exactly.
Mass media interests. This can really be the voice of the scene as it's happening.
And one of the in this first issue of the magazine, one of the early interviews I didn't know how to interview people. I've done a lot of interviews over the years in the magazine, but the first interview I did was with Jello from the Dead Kennedys, and we can come back to that.
Oh my gosh,
that flyer later because there's a big bunch of mistakes. But in this first issue of the magazine, but
oh my god,
Jello said something very prescient in that. I just walked up to him with Patrick Bardell after one of his spoken word performances. I think it was at the Pine Street Theater or La Luna. Is it Pine Street? Yeah, right on. I love Pine Street.
The early hours of Independence Day, 1991.
Nice. Yeah, well, Pine Street Theater, this is a great place. Predates La Luna. It became La Luna, but it was full of I don't want to get sidetracked here.
This is the show of sidetracking.
Okay. Well, it was full of all these chandeliers hanging all over the place in that place. It was looks like Sears and Roebuck or something, But anyway, Jello said something in that interview that I thought was really important. He said, "Don't hate the media, become the media."
Oh, damn. All right.
So we did, I mean, we really embodied that idea.
Yeah.
That idea was really powerful to us, and so that was a founding principle of Plazm magazine.
God, I mean, and that's got to be such an important affirmation this early in the project too, to be like, because I mean, if this is the fall issue,
I think he was on to there's a certain zeitgeist to that, so it's 1991, it's the beginning of the digital age, the internet isn't there yet. But that idea, don't hate the media, become the media, it's like, okay, yeah, well, that's what we're feeling, and that's what when we were talking about artists representing artists and not finding the avenues of expression that we want for our own work. And I personally think about it from a design standpoint, okay, I don't just need to make logos for developments or whatever.
But I think it's
affirmation is the right word. Yeah, it's a very powerful idea, and I think that's. I've had a conversation with Kate Bingaman Burt, a public conversation that we did together one time, and she said Plazm was a permission giver.
Yeah,
and I think that's I feel like that's accurate, and I feel like it's. But I always, whether I'm working with. Talking to students or working with interns or whatever, I always feel like it's. You got to do what's inside of you.
Yeah.
You got to, when you're building a portfolio or whatever, you can put in work that you think people want to see, or you can put in the work that you love. And if you put in the work that you love, you're more likely to get the job you want. You're more likely to do the work you want.
God, yes.
You're more likely to be fulfilled in your life. Right? But if you put in the stuff that you think people want to see, you're less likely to do all of those things.
Absolutely. Right? If you're just living to, what the algorithm wants, then that's going to make you miserable. Whatever the algorithm is in your context. I'm leafing through. So this first issue is very big. It is a tall boy.
Yeah, the first 4 issues were 11 by 17 was the trim size. It's a great format to design in.
Oh, yeah.
But it also inhibited us. And so we couldn't get the distribution that we wanted with that size because there literally were stores where we wouldn't fit in their racks. Like you couldn't be in Barnes & Noble because it doesn't, So if you want national distribution, at least at that stage when we made the change, it was because of that. We changed the size to 9 by 12 after issue 4.
So when you put out this first issue, what was the reaction? Like I imagine, probably you were able to see some results from it pretty quickly.
There was, well, it's we talked about the Oregonian earlier, but they covered it. It was news.
So you
Here,
came
let
up.
me show you this. So there's it's on our Instagram feed, but you can see that the article in the Oregonian, not so standard issue, and so on. And so this is, it's a full page in the Oregonian.
Yeah, it's a long article with
news,
2 photos.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of other historic things that you can see that we're posting on our Instagram feed or our online magazine. The stories are there as well.
Yeah.
And so this ad we'll have to talk about
Yeah.
as well. This on the back cover, which is my ad, but it's my logo isn't produced correctly in my ad. So,
Well, how did that happen?
well, I don't know exactly how it happened. I should bring up. Oh, so I have a whole box, and that's another thing that I brought to talk about. This see my folder there is called Formal Chaos Design. That was the name of my design company. If you flip it all the way over, so there's the proper logo.
Oh my God!
So,
wow.
So that was student work.
So you're doing Formal Chaos while you're at school. Where are you going to school?
This was a school project, and I went to school at Mount Hood Community College.
Nice.
I have a 2-year associate degree in graphic design. That's the extent of my college education, and I got what I needed there. And one of the projects was, as probably most students in any design program, during the course of the study, you have to do some kind of self-promotion project, whether it's a portfolio project or, packaging for your own design company, whether it's a website, whatever you do.
Yeah.
So this was that project. And so my concept here was about creating order out of chaos, which I feel like there's something that it's something we do as humans, but it's also something we do as designers, right?
Absolutely.
We make systems for things, but there's also got to be an embrace of, every day you're walking around in the world, it's chaos. You can't control. Humans have this instinct for trying to put things into order, but at the same time, nothing is fixed, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I have a favorite Dalai Lama quote. He said, it was a tweet, actually. So it's good to.
I didn't realize he had a Twitter.
Oh yeah, and he gets more into those characters than anybody else. I'll tell you. 2 words: embrace uncertainty. And
Beautiful.
I've thought about that for years, right? But that, in a certain way, that is what Formal Chaos Design is the idea of the balance between things happening naturally and things and acting with intention.
Yeah.
Right.
This logo also it looks like it's digitally produced. Like
there's some digital there, and so when I went to school, it was I feel fortunate for it to have been at that time. So this is 88, 89, something like that, 90. So we had to learn the manual skills. So you'd have a rapidograph pen and you have to draw. And I brought some of these there's an early assignment from that I saved a couple of them, but you can lift the top, and you have to. So you have to do all this stuff manually, but there was also a computer lab, and in the computer lab there was Photoshop 1.0 and Aldus PageMaker, and so there were some beginning points, and if you look at there's some late 80s stuff, like if you look at April Agreement, or you look at early emigre fonts, and then you look at what is done here with the word chaos, it's treated in that way. But you can see all my early sketches. See these? There are lots of sketches in there.
Oh yeah.
Of trying to figure out how that should work.
I really like this chaos word mark. It's got such a nice sense of movement in it.
So here are a bunch of if you look at these, there's tons of
oh my God.
So there's tons of drawn ones, painted and whatever, but then they're scanned in.
Oh yeah. And you're essentially taking all these pieces,
eagle,
starting them
use that Fort George work now. That typeface.
Oh yeah. I recognize that. But this is because you're like right there on the cusp of digital. Like you're pulling digital elements together, and then like is the final result of that logo. It looks like kind of like photo ready art. Oh my gosh, with the red.
See, well, that's the final. That's how. See, there's a bunch of these, like where I'm testing different colors.
This is all hand done. Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
That's gorgeous.
Here's some fun stuff too.
Wow. Holy hell. Oh my god. That's gorgeous.
So that's all the working process things. Here's the final printed card there.
That's beautiful. Oh. I'm like so...
Yeah, you can keep that one. None of the information is correct if you want. But if you want a souvenir of my first business card, that's it.
Oh my god, thank you. I will not send any mail to this P.O. box, but I love that. This is really, really cool. I think it's also like such a good reminder. Like I think a lot of our students, like, they grow up in, this digital era. And when they think of graphic design, they think of this purely digital enterprise. But like you're working back and forth between digital and physical. You're like, like all of these letterheads, like you are doing by hand with pen.
Oh yeah, that was the only way. Everything is by hand. Like here's some other things I just found in this folder. So these were letters. Like when I got out of school, I had this printed letterhead, and to try to get work, I was sending mail to people. Here's a typewritten letter, and I would type each letter by hand on my typewriter. It was an electric typewriter, so it was high tech, but there I'm writing to Roger Bentley.
And you're having to...
This is a cold call letter, or I get referred from one person to another person. I don't know what it says in there, but...
Is this like a draft of the letter, and you're like...
That's that one, because it's written all over, it probably was a draft. But, these letters, like, I'm a recent honors graduate of design program at Mount Hood Community College, and these are my instructors, and can I have an appointment, and try to get a somebody to look at my portfolio.
Yeah. Which, like, you were born in New York. Like, when did you come out to
my parents
Portland?
My parents moved out. I was born in the Bronx, and they moved when I was about 7 to Brightwood.
Where is Brightwood?
Brightwood is on Mount Hood.
Oh.
So if you're driving up to go skiing or whatever, you drive through Brightwood before you get to Welch's and Zigzag and Rhododendron. But
all the big towns.
Those are the mountain towns, and that's where I went to grade school and high school in Sandy. But there's a name for people in Portland. At least there was then. If you live up on the mountain, they call people that live in the valley Flatlanders. So the Flatlanders.
I will come for you, Flatlander.
Well,
there can only be one.
It's it's not too derogatory. It's pretty accurately descriptive in a way, but if you live on the mountain, then the other people live in the valley. But if you live in Central Oregon, everybody calls everything over here the valley, right?
That makes sense.
Well, whatever.
We're trapped in between the mountains here. This sheet has like a bunch of rejected, I think, names
could be. I don't know. I haven't looked through this folder in a long time.
One that you spend a lot of time on in the bottom half is Mr. New Potato Design. There's a lot of potato-based ones.
I don't know anything. I don't remember that at all.
New Potato Design.
I have no idea about that. Yeah.
God Incorporated.
That's not gonna work.
There's some problems. Structural Chaos, spelled K-A-O-S. That's a great one.
See, that's closer to that's a precursor to formal chaos, I think, because
that's definitely
structure. Yeah.
And then like probably you're working your way down, and they are getting like more wild, but like right up here at the top there's like J. Berger Associates. Like just There's
Yeah.
kind of a gradient of.
Yeah, well, it's like the creative process is always it's always the same and always different, right?
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere, and it doesn't matter where you start, but the point is, and if you don't know where to start, the thing to do is to start,
Yeah.
right? So you start somewhere, and sometimes it's the first idea, sometimes it's the 100th.
Yeah.
But
The thing kind of teaches you where to go with
you
it.
have to learn, and you follow. This is something I learned from John Cage. Actually, is this idea of following fragments. Like if you're painting a painting, you know if it's a good brushstroke, and then you continue and you add to it. You don't need to know the end result. If I'm designing something, I try a typeface. If it doesn't work, I change it. If I make a mark, I may not like the mark. You got to start with zero, though, a blank page.
Yeah. So this is your school project. After you're graduating, you're trying to make a go of it.
Yeah, and I got involved with this group of artists, and we and started working on what became Plasm Number One. And I designed. As I mentioned earlier, I did an interview. I wrote. There's some pieces that I wrote in there or co-wrote in there, and so I was part of it and part of this group that birthed this thing that brought this into existence. And there's some advertising in there. I don't know that any of it was paid for, but it's usually people did work, and then they help make it happen. And so take an ad. We have so there was the idea that we would be selling ads. Whether we were actually selling them with the first issue or not is a different. And so Ruben said, well, you take a half page. And so I designed a half page ad, and he put it on the back cover. And I don't know who decided what goes where. And if I had known I had the back cover, I would have designed for the whole space as opposed to having this half page on the back cover. But also the thing is the logo is fucked up.
Yeah,
like it didn't. The word chaos didn't print.
No, not at all.
So however, whether I screwed up or whether somebody else, actually a number of the things that I created for this issue have errors in them. Yeah, a bunch of them. And that errata sheet that you find at the beginning of that, which I titled Inadvertent Circumcisions. So those are the articles. All those articles I designed. Bad Cop, No Donut, and then Jello Interview, and Roid Patrol, I think it's called.
Yeah.
So Roid Patrol is by Andy. Andy was my housemate who introduced me to this thing to begin with. Those are the pieces that got cut off of what's in the magazine. And so I guess if anybody bought this issue after it was on newsstands, it might have included this little sheet.
I assume it's after it went to press that realized all this stuff. Did you have to hurriedly print a bunch of these and cut them down and stuff them in?
They were already out the door. It's like I said, if somebody later bought a back issue, or like I brought this issue for this box that goes in the PSU library, I'm going to stick one of those in there because it's something that we created and it's part of it. But most people didn't probably get it, and they just, the article ended, and it's I don't know what software I was using versus what went out to press, and the way things went to press then was much different. I mean, you have to get a Linotronic output or RC paper, they paste it up, strip it at the printer, and there's a bunch of processes, and I wasn't involved in the print production of this issue at that stage.
A much more elaborate thing back in the day.
It was, but at later issues I was more involved in looking at those proofs, and you learn as you go.
Absolutely.
I mean, and it's like with anything with design, you can learn at your own expense, or you can learn at somebody else's. If I got a job and I was in there might be other, if I was in working at an agency, or if I had a job at Wyden in those days, there would have been people that knew about production, that there would be checks and balances.
Yeah.
And I'm learning. That's what I mean by learning at others. So I may not know everything when I get this job, but I'm learning, and I'm within the boundaries of these constructs. Right?
Yeah.
So instead, I mean, it's all kind of growing, growing up in public in a way, in that
Absolutely.
way.
Well, and like, had you even done like a major print run of a thing like this before?
Oh no, I never designed a magazine, and we none of us had ever produced a magazine. We didn't know anything about the magazine business. All we knew is that don't hate the media, become the media. All we knew is that okay, if we want to, we knew that this was a means of distribution of information, and we studied all kinds of everybody that was part of this group brought their lived experience and their learned experience and whatever, and we studied we're reading all kinds of magazines or reading about magazines like Transition or The Situationist or any number of this, and there were a lot of Xerox zines too.
Yeah.
People were using Xerox in those days, so there's a lot of photocopies of zines were around too in a certain way. So there's also posters like how people putting up broadsheets. There's a rich history of art movements and small groups of people all over the world that create and distribute things that are meaningful to them.
Yeah.
So this is the tradition we were operating from, where it's like, okay, we need to do, and we're trying to learn it as we go. In terms of how this was distributed, we didn't know anything about distribution. I mean, and the pricing of it, like, okay, it's $2 cover price. We want it to be affordable for artists. That was the only driver of that cover price, and and it's gone up since then.
I don't think I can get a bottled water here on campus for $2 anymore.
Well, maybe not, but it's $2, and then the next issue had probably, I mean that's probably in there. It's had probably twice as many pages, 225, and then the third issue we were offset litho, so it was more expensive. We went up to 325 or something, and the fourth issue, it was like that cover price. We printed 2,500 copies of Plazm 4. It was $3.25 on the cover price, I believe, $3.25. And even if we sold every single copy, we still wouldn't have broken even.
Oh God!
It's like, okay, well, something is wrong with this. And these early issues, they were paid for by us. I mean, one individual in our group had enough money to pay the printing bill, and everybody else in the group agreed to pay back in equal proportions this loan that he made to pay the printing bill. And so we did that for the first 4 issues.
Did it start to become worrisome as I imagine that bill got higher?
Well, it's just it's a wake up call. I mean, we were, a lot of it was done by intuition. It's like, okay, well, this costs more. We better, and like I said earlier, the magazine business is a shitty business. It's not like, once you start to get into it, it's the distribution. So you find distributors for your magazine.
Yeah.
You could consign the issues. Like some of them, we would just walk into stores and say, would you carry the magazine? And that's how, like, there was Durst Thriftway, which is now I think Trader Joe's on across from the Blue Moon.
Yeah.
But that was a place that carried us. And then Rich's Cigar Store carried us. And some local places we walk in, and so we'll take it. We'll give you half of what we sell. And distributors will do that too. Once you find distributors, there were no official distributors for this first issue.
Oh wow!
But distributors give you half, but they only give you half of what they sell. So you send them one issue, they'll give you 50% off the cover price of what they sell, and then they'll pay you after you send them the second one. So you're into it. If you're a quarterly magazine, it could be like 6 months before you see, you realize that your sell through was 10% or whatever, or 50%. So, it's a very difficult structure, and this is why magazines such as you see them now are half advertising, because the advertising is what pays the bills. Or where you buy a subscription to Spin magazine, 12 issues for $12, it doesn't even cover the fucking postage, right? And
Yeah.
that tells you something. It's only about the advertising.
Well, they're also
That's how
hoping
they-
and praying that you forget that you're subscribed to Spin Magazine,
Well,
and you can take that $96 bill for the second year that they send you.
There are a lot of levers there, but there's also, I mean, a lot of those publishers publish multiple magazines, and so Condé Nast can say, to an advertiser, I'll sell you details, but you also get to buy Men's Health and you're buying this block, and it's, so as an independent publisher, you don't have any of that.
No.
And you don't have the audience,
Yeah.
right? So, it's hard. I mean, it changed over time, and the history of Plazm is, I mean, we learned each issue.
Yeah. So after issue 4, that's where the rescale happens.
We changed the size,
Yeah.
to 9x12. The second issue, I remember we didn't have a phone other than we had one a phone number, which was a voicemail, so you could leave a message on the voicemail. And I remember checking the voicemail one time after issue 2 came out, and it was Doug Biggert from Tower Records. Today's your lucky day. Amazing.
Oh, God.
So this guy
No,
from Tower...
thanks.
No, but maybe it wasn't exactly that voice, but something like that. I remember he saying, "Today's your lucky day," but Tower Records picked us up.
Oh, shit.
So it was he walked into Rich's cigar store,
Yeah.
found a copy of Plazm, and wanted to distribute it nationally in Tower, and that was a big deal then.
Yeah.
So became our first national distribution.
And that's a cool,
after issue 2.
That's that's Tower at their height of power, where they're like the place that everyone goes to.
It was a big deal. So that was one. And then we found other distributors as we were continuing. We looked, and there was a magazine called Mondo 2000, which we were fans of in those days. And that was kind of a precursor to Wired. It's more psychedelic and involved Timothy Leary and a number of other. And we actually did a ad trade with them and interviewed one of the editors. Are You Serious? It was published in issue 4 of the magazine. So they published their distributors in the front of their magazine and in their masthead. Anarchy Magazine published their distributors in the front of the magazine. So we start calling these places, sending them samples and getting picked up by different distributors. And eventually it led to, okay, well, if you want to grow, you got to fit into the shelves.
Yeah. And so. I imagine, too, once you're national, you've got a little bit more money rolling in,
Well,
probably not actively losing money.
Well, I mean, we realized that, okay, well, what we were doing was not sustainable. And Patrick didn't continue, I think, after issue 4 either. So he was not going to loan money to print another issue. We changed the size. Then the all bunch of things changed, because the 9x12 was as big as we can get, and get it 4 up instead of 2 up on a press sheet, right? So it was a little oversized and economized certain things, but then the draw from distributors was way bigger, right? So so now we need to print 7,500, not 2,500. It's okay, well, or whatever it was, I can't remember the numbers, but so the scale changed. And then on the other side, you got, we're distributing more. Now we got to make a media kit. Let's try to sell more ads. Let's try to sell national ads. And so there's all these things that we're trying to do to support our magazine habit, basically, and early in those days, I think it's maybe 93, we started creating and selling typefaces. And so those $60 on a floppy disk, this came about really, Pete McCracken became involved in those, probably issue 3, I think. And so about 93, we started collaborating, and that was one of the things that he brought to it, and selling, so, the typographic experimentation, the design experimentation that was happening in the magazine, that enhanced it. But $60 on a floppy disk didn't pay us to be there, let alone pay the printing bill, right? And so eventually we started Plazm Design. So that was about 95, I think. and the design firm has supported our magazine habit, essentially. Yeah.
Like almost like a drug habit in a way,
The magazine, I think we used it as a printed laboratory, and we experiment with form and process and content. And whether our clients know it or not, they benefit from those experimentations because it results in better work.
Yeah.
And the typography experimentation and creating of typeface like that turns into, well, we make custom logos, we make custom identities, or even custom fonts for people. Like, okay, we didn't the corporate typeface for Nike, but this is many years later. This is not $60 on a floppy disk anymore. That's what I mean. You learn at your own expense, or you learn others, and you got to just do these things to see. You don't know what it's going to lead to, but unless you try something, unless you risk failure, you're not going to succeed.
I mean, did it feel at times like I'm frustrated with this, I want to stop doing this?
Oh, there are plenty of times with the magazine. It's been plenty of times where it's like, and yeah, it's never made any money. But now we don't print it if it's going to lose, unless it's going to break even, right? But it's a different
you do the
era.
numbers ahead of time.
Yeah, it's a different era, and things are different.
Yeah,
but the value of print is different now. I mean, it's like
so much.
In 1991, nobody was platform. You couldn't blog or you don't have Instagram. You don't have any of that. There was no internet that was widely accessible.
No.
It was probably until 94 maybe when it started to get to be AOL and that kind of stuff. But technology changes, and the role of print changes.
Absolutely.
I mean, it used to be it's about immediacy of information, and now there's nothing that's going to be more immediate than the phone in your pocket. But now I think the role of print is about exclusivity.
I've been thinking the same thing.
And we've been thinking that way for at least a decade, where it's like, okay, now when we print an issue, everything that's in the magazine does not go online.
Yeah.
Because I want the experience of what somebody holds in their hand to be unique.
And it's a special thing. Like you mentioned Rich's cigar shop earlier, which like I don't know if maybe it's not as much of a thing in other cities, but Rich's here, like the reason I feel like 90% of the people who went to it was
magazines, sure.
Yeah, it's a magazine. Well, it was a magazine paradise. They don't have magazines anymore. And I remember going in there like 6 months into the pandemic, seeing all their
looking for a cigar.
Yes. Well, like that was almost the saddest part. Like the they have like these huge magazine racks that are all beautiful in wood, and then they have like kind of a cigar like case area behind a little counter. And the woman, like, as soon as I walked in, intercepted me because she knew what I was there for, and it was not cigars. And she was like,
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I know you're probably here for the magazines. We don't have magazines anymore, but would you like a cigar? No, actually. No, thank you. But, like, thinking about that in relation to, like, teaching print design, too, like, maybe print, like, is less of a mass media thing than it was, although you can still go to Fred Meyer, as I did like a week ago, and pick up the Harry Styles commemorative magazine. Don't know who's putting that out, but all right. I wonder if they have a special issue on how he spit in the other guy's lap. Who knows? But
it's an insert of some kind.
But it's so much more special to like
it's
touch
tactile.
a thing, and
I mean, we're analog beings, and it's an analog medium.
Yeah.
So
and digital just doesn't last. I mean, like
it's ephemeral in a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, these print objects are also ephemeral, but digital is like quick.
It's quick, and it makes sense for lots of things. Like if speed is your jam, but like I'm never gonna be able to hold a PDF in my hand like I'm holding issue 1 of Plazm right here. It's never gonna feel the same way. That makes this all the more special. Like that there's this like tactility and this. I didn't realize that this episode was just going to be a love song to print.
Well,
apparently that's the mood that I'm in. It's really magical.
So that's the second issue. Oh, it's got the third and the fourth. So these are the first four right there.
Wow. So already with issue 2, like you've completely changed the aesthetic.
It's a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Well, there's and my role in the magazine, my title is art director. And that's so I guess I always was I started to ask other designers to design pages, and so I would design, some other people would design, some people that were part of our collective. We called ourselves a media cooperative, those Plazm Media Cooperative, and we never talked about the founding of the name here, but we did talk about drug earlier, but Plazm was the winning name, and in that first issue, it's spelled in both with S and a Z.
Yeah.
And, it comes from the word protoplasm, so building blocks of the universe kind of idea.
Oh.
So that's where that's from.
So really thinking of this as like kind of almost foundational for like exposing this art scene to a broader audience.
It was for our we were looking for avenues of expression for our work, but also for other artists.
Yeah.
And design, and all of it kind of at an equal level. So whether it's a submission that comes in the mail, whether it's something that we create, or whether it's something that we interview somebody that's famous or whatever, or they contribute in some way. But we want to present all those things on an equal level, and it's always been that way. It's about creativity.
Yeah. As I'm leafing through this, like you've definitely got some real ads in here.
There's my second ad, which the word chaos actually shows up in.
Yes, and you've got the tagline for it. You want the same old shit? Then don't call me.
Oh man. Yeah, well, I guess that's true. I guess that's accurate.
I bet that's a good pitch for the audience of this, though. Like,
I don't know if I ever got a call from that or not, but whatever, I mean, I have to say that all of my career wouldn't be the career that it is without having created this thing and done this work, because it's led to everything else. It's like so I'll give you an example of the student work. Like, I was showing these typewritten letters I was sent to I wanted to work at Wieden and Kennedy,
yeah.
And I dropped my portfolio off there, and I distinctly remember getting the come pick it up call. Like, no interview,
Whoa.
no nothing,
That's
nothing. Just come pick it up, And it was years later, actually, that I, as art director of the magazine, I was getting asking different designers to work on things, and I had a mutual friend who knew John Boyler, who was an art director there at Wieden and Kennedy, and at the time, and said, well, maybe John would design some spreads. John had seen the magazine. He picked it up at Rich's cigar store or whatever, and he wanted to design spreads, and that was great. And the first spread he designed here is in issue 3, actually, which we made. It's the center spread.
Wow.
And I have the original mechanicals for that as well. It's pasted up. So I was in there meeting with him at Wieden one day, and he asked if I could help out in the studio, and I proceeded to do that for 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Right? So I never showed a portfolio in that case, but in all those years, at White and working at White, I came to see the line of portfolios outside Susan Hoffman's door, for example, and realized, well, a lot of people actually want to work here. And so, it wasn't like a personal thing or something that I didn't get an interview there out of school. It's just that, I mean, but this is an illustration of like, if I hadn't been working on this magazine, involved in this magazine, doing what I was doing, following my own intuition, my own creative bliss, then I never would have been standing in that place.
And that is such an amazingly good lesson for folks who are just starting out in this field. Like, you may have some goal that you are like wanting to achieve, but like if you build your own thing, if you like write your own story, you may get that goal eventually too.
Well, you got to follow your bliss.
Yeah.
And you got to put it out there.
Yeah.
If you don't, nobody knows.
And it's like, the person that you may be like interviewing with, like, may just end up being like one of many contributors to the project that you're working on because they like it. You're in the Plazm space. What is it like to be in that space, and where do you go from there?
Well, we needed to eventually have a space. I mean, in the early days, as I said, we were meeting in people's houses, and then the first Plazm office was in the sun porch of my rented house. And, it was like we could have two people sitting in there at a time. And, we had, I think, whatever my computer was like a Quadra, I think, a Mac Quadra.
Oh, sure.
I can't remember what it was by then, but
top of the line, I believe.
Yeah, right. Well, at one point, but yeah. Not when I was using it, but we continued, and then we took over we found there was a space, I think it was Vita Gallery, so the Myler building became our home. Now it's a Salvation Army or youth building. It's kind of on Southwest 9th. About a block from Powell's. It's kind of a wedge-shaped building there.
Oh, yes, I know the one.
So they had like an office they weren't using. So we took over that office and moved all the stuff out of my sun porch into that office, which was barely bigger. But then we ended up getting there was another gallery there, Gallery 8. It was called number 8. And there were a lot of cool things in that building.
Yeah.
Downstairs, the coffee shop Umbra Penumbra, amazing space, which we've had some shows in there, and there were other shows in there. There's great recording that just last year Larry Crane remastered of Elliott Smith that you can find from Umbra Penumbra. It was great while it lasted, But this is probably 94 and 95. We started making work as Plazm Design.
Yeah.
And some of that grew out of our magazine kind of heritage. I brought a couple things. Oh, I guess it's about errors, but it's also about process. But we end up being myself, like a lot of people that were in the early founding days had, because it was all volunteer. We couldn't pay ourselves to be there.
Yeah.
We couldn't pay for the magazine, let alone pay ourselves, let alone pay anybody else.
Yeah.
Everything is volunteer. Every contribution was submitted. We made it ourselves. We did it ourselves, and there's no money at all in it. There's this juncture where really a lot of the original founding members had gone, and it was myself and Pete and Nico in 1995, and we threw all of our work into a box and silk screened the word Plazm on the outside and called it a portfolio. And we started sending it out.
Yeah.
And we started getting work. We got this Nike job for the U.S. Open. But they wanted graphics for it, and with a specific New York attitude, and so we had bought this Xerox machine at auction, Oregon State auction. It was like a $200 Xerox machine, and it was great, except that all the shit that would come out every time you photocopy. You couldn't get a clean photocopy on it, right? It was fucked up, but we used that, and so we probably should bill them for the Xerox machine. We used it so much on that job, I mean, it was only $200, but we Xerox a lot of things. And then what you're holding here is this is a Wyden project that actually we all worked on, all three of us and a number of other people. And John Boyler was the art director of this campaign. This was for the Olympics for Nike '96,
Oh,
and
wow.
these books, Enrique, he was a student of mine at OS or at Mount Hood Community College because I went back there and taught a little bit. He was a student, and then he became a Plazm intern, and then he became a Wyden and Kennedy employee, and he's an amazing creative director now. He put together these books of all the scraps from making all these ads.
Oh, so these are just the leftover.
That's just the leftover.
Bits.
Okay, there's big piles of,
Oh my
it's
God.
Wyden had gotten at that point they were getting out all those drafting tables out of the studio and putting computers in, and they had to bring them back because we had to cut everything up manually and Xerox everything and paste it all together to make this work.
I mean, the future is almost always at least partially the past.
Well,
you gotta
it contains it.
Yeah. This is such a gorgeous piece. So like this is the thing itself, right?
Yeah,
those
those were inserts. There were a series of inserts. This was related to the Olympics, 1996. Nike doesn't want to sponsor the Olympics, and so the writing, Ernest Lupinacci is the writer, John Boyler is the art director, and Pete and Nico and I all, and other people, but the three of us Xerox all this stuff.
Yeah, there's 10,000 pounds of Xerox on this.
There's a lot of Xeroxing.
The inside is just like collage city, like really, really cool with like some like the way that you're using the bottom of the shoe is fairly psychedelic too.
Oh, he's stuck it on the Xerox machine.
Yeah, but it's it's very bold, and then like the scrap piece is this really lovely like 11 by 17 kind of long book. So you get like these like 26 are these 12 by 18s? No, they're 11 by 17s. But like this long book.
So they're all different. Whoever has one of those, it's different than that. I mean, it's whatever stuff was lying around.
Yeah. But it's like all the messy scrap of what came out of the copier, and it's gorgeous. Yeah, and there's like cut out bits from where you've actually used stuff for the ads. That's also like such a cool way of like taking what would otherwise just be like stuff that's thrown away and making something like beautiful out of it.
Yeah, little keepsake.
Who got those? Like
whoever was working on that or whoever picked one up. It's just like it's just people in the studio at the time. Yeah,
that's beautiful. Is there anything else from the boxes and stuff that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you asked for. 3 mistakes, and so I brought I mean, there are more than 3 mistakes in here, but they're all kind of interconnected. So one is the ad on the back cover of the issue 1, and and then I brought this box from a John Cage exhibit, and I brought that print there by Heather Watkins with the word clarity on it, and she had a tumor behind her eye, and she had made that, and she left that in my hospital room when I was because I was recovering from a bike accident that gave me a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
And so this was about 10 years ago, and so that's another accident that I thought that would. It's not a design accident, but maybe it's a design accident. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's
an accident.
It's life changing.
It happened to me, and it changed. Yes, it definitely changed my life.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd bring that as well.
Yeah, that's a beautiful like reminder of like the spirit of like getting through it. There's like a nice little hole in the middle too, so you can look through it.
Yeah. Well, my wife tells me I stared at that a lot. That piece of art when I was in the hospital. But it's I'm happy to talk about that and how it impacted my work or not work, but it's probably a little bit of both.
I mean, yeah.
But so there's that. I mean, and yeah.
Where did that? Yeah, like what? I mean, I know you had a long process of recovering from that, and like, what was that like? What was the impact like initially, and then kind of moving forward?
Well, I did a talk about this, and you can find this online where I called it "Doing Better: How I Broke My Brain and Changed My Mind."
Yeah.
So, I had a long to-do list before the accident. I was riding to work. I was working at Liquid, and it was a Windows. I was in charge of this global retail launch for Windows 8 or whatever it was. It was a Microsoft product, and I didn't make it to the meeting.
Yeah.
But it's the same bike ride I take every day. But I had a new bike, and the brakes worked a lot better than the old one.
Oh.
And apparently I went over the handlebars. But anyway, what did I woke up in the hospital with a much shorter to-do list.
Yeah.
Like literally wake up more. I mean, that was one of the items on the to-do list.
Yeah.
There are only like 3 items. So I had to relearn a lot of things to relearn how to read, to walk, to,
Yeah.
do everything. And yeah, it was a long road.
I imagine it clarified your priorities in your life a lot too.
Well, it definitely it changed them for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, it's not. It shouldn't take a near-death experience to make one realize what every moment is worth, but that's the effect it had on me.
Yeah. It's a big, meaningful thing.
Well, it's life, right?
Yeah.
It's like this thing. It's like, well, what do is everything on the to-do list actually something you need to do?
God, no.
You know?
It's, yeah. I mean, there's so, I mean, I haven't gone through, something that life-changing myself, but like, I would imagine you really interrogate things probably more as
Well,
to what their value is to you.
well, I certainly have more intentionality
Yeah.
about the, but it's different. It's different energy. So it's interesting to try to start making design work again. And a friend, Jeff Faulkner, gave me a poster to design for a talk he was doing, and that was so there were things like there were steps, and it was great to like that my employer actually at the time, which was they take out in this disability insurance.
Oh,
So
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a disability policy on every person, and it's insurance that actually works. So I was getting my pre-accident salary in for a certain amount of time, and then when I could start going back to work, if I could work 10 hours out of 40, then the disability insurance would pay the other 30.
Yeah.
And so it was a graduated, as my speech language pathologist used to say, graduated return to normal activity. That's what you used to say. So that's what it took. I mean, it's just okay. I had to learn how to get around in a wheelchair. Then I had to learn how to. I mean, and my son at the time, 3 years old, we would read Hop on Pop together, and we were both at the same level,
Oh.
right?
Yeah.
It's so yeah, it's a progression of things. It's interesting to have to go through that, and you really come to realize how much we take for granted, how much so young children, they nap, right?
Yeah.
Because they're taking in so much. And after I was out of the hospital, I was at home care, and I just going on my back porch, I could only stay out there for a few minutes because of the bright colors, the leaves rustling, the whatever is overwhelming. I was sleeping 12 hours a day and 12 hours and taking a nap,
Yeah. You're doing what you need to do to like.
Yeah, well, that's right. You honor the healing power of sleep.
Yeah.
As Jill Bolt Taylor says.
Your body is telling you a message that you need to pay attention to, and you cannot ignore it.
Well, that's right. I think it's the same. Like I had COVID back in July, and I've read about it. And a lot of people that end up with long COVID, these are people that don't rest when they're sick.
Interesting.
People with long COVID don't rest when they're sick.
Well, that bodes very
there you
poorly
go.
for me.
Well, I don't know. It's an interesting.
Maybe this is my wake-up call.
Well, it's an interesting thing, but if an animal is injured, they just lay down in the forest and they can sleep for days.
Yeah.
And they get up because the body is healing itself. The body knows what to do. The animal knows what to do. We humans, our brains are bossing us around.
Yeah.
You know,
We have a magical power to delude ourselves that nonsense means stuff.
Yeah, you got to push some more pixels around.
I need to fill out some more forms. These forms are so important and won't immediately be discarded.
Got to check your Instagram.
I've looked at the main feed, but what's happening in Reels? That's where all the real action is. That's got to be such a hard thing to go through, but like it's remarkable like that you did get through it and like you fought your way back here.
Well, it's a combination of all kinds of things that allowed it. I mean, I'm very fortunate. Like the bleeding in my brain stopped. I was in decent health. I was able to, somebody was sitting on their porch and called the, paramedics or whatever, I got to OHSU in time, there's so many factors. I was in reasonably good health. I had decent diet. I had the love and support of my family. I had community around me.
Yeah.
I mean, there was amazing community of support. There was, Get Well Josh sign hanging in Reading Frenzy I have a picture of. There's a PICA did a fundraiser to pay for some of the medical costs that weren't covered. So yeah, the accident happened to a lot of people, really. And I really value all that support and that. So all of that is true. And if I didn't have an optimistic attitude, none of it would have mattered.
Yeah.
Right? So, I had to do the work, but I needed to have this infrastructure of support. Nobody gets through this life on their own.
Yeah.
Right? You can't do it yourself.
God, yeah. I mean, there's so many broader lessons in that too. Like community and being around people who care about you is so important and who are like interested in the things that you're interested in to help buoy you, but also like maintaining positivity and like fighting for, your life and what you love. Like that's what keeps you going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It has a way of prioritizing things.
Absolutely. And considering the strange times that we find ourselves in, like it's, good to keep those things in mind.
Well, there's always, there's a lot of things contesting for your attention today. And so discernment is a very important value.
Yeah.
And acting with intention, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the old, it's kind of an old printer's at measure twice, cut once. but
I've never believed that. Measure 5 times, cut 5 times.
Yeah. But, you can do, you can apply that to a lot of things.
Yeah.
That idea.
Should we talk about this John Cage box too?
So this box is from a show that I saw in 1994. So this is really formative and inspirational for me in terms of my design work, my work, how I approach art directing and curating with Plazm magazine, and really all projects. But it's deeply informed me. But my mom had moved down after years in Oregon down to Santa Barbara, tired of the rain, and when I would go down to visit her, she'd pick me up in LA or drop me off in LA if I was flying in there. And sometimes we would go to a show. And so we went to Mocha, and it was this John Cage show, and it totally blew my mind. It was one of his last exhibits before he passed, but he had mapped the XY coordinates on all the gallery walls, and then instructed the gallery staff to throw the I Ching at specific intervals. And the I Ching would then direct them where to move paintings, where to exhibit paintings or work. So it was unbelievable. So and there were some things that would never be shown, that were never shown. There were some things that never moved, some things that were up by the ceiling, others down by the floor.
Just completely gamifying
It
and
was
randomizing.
random, yeah, principles random.
Wow.
So, and he said, we're creating the parameters to allow for anything to happen. We are
Beautiful.
creating, and so this idea, I came back like, I was totally energized by this idea, and I think that's what I mean. That's what this magazine is.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I've tried to. I bring that idea into many projects.
Yeah.
But
And that's such a valuable thing. Like, you know, there's so much in this world that is like structured and is meant to be a certain way, and like to have a space where you can just like do something weird and fun is like huge.
and you know, to embrace. I mean, to get back to the idea of chaos.
Yeah.
You know, this is the principles of random is really, and this box, this is the catalog for the show, and it's done in the same way. There are all these little, as you're going through it, there are all these little artifacts and books and booklets and things, and they're all just thrown in this box.
Yeah, loose translucent sheets of paper. So they're just kind of like it's even hard to kind of discern one from the other.
Well,
Uh,
they're all different and they're all unique, and you can put them back in a different order. That was on the cover, I think, that particular one. But yeah, so anyway, deeply informative and inspirational thing for me. And so 20 years later, my mom sent me a book on John Cage, a biography of him called Where the Heart Beats. And this may have been when I was recovering. I don't know that I was reading it, but
yeah.
I'm trying to remember but this book totally blew my mind in a new way. So I'm just going to read you one passage that comes from that book.
Yeah.
He says, the first question I ask myself when something doesn't seem to be beautiful, the first question I ask is, why do I think it is not beautiful? And very shortly I discover that there is no reason. If we can conquer that dislike, or begin to like what we dislike, then the world is more open.
Mm.
That path to increasing one's enjoyment of life is the path I think we'd all best take. To use art, not as self-expression, but as self-alteration, to become more open.
Wow.
So
Damn.
that's now my goal in life. Right? I never had a goal in life before, but to be more open and to embrace what you don't like.
Yeah.
You know, it's all part of the world. Like, yeah. So anyway, that 20 years later, reading this book blew my mind in a whole new way. So that's my new John Cage, or newer.
A good thing for us all to kind of bring with us, like being open and finding new things, like
It's easy
making
to
space for change.
it's easy to be dismissive,
Yeah.
particularly in today's world, whether it's politics or whatever. It's easy to dismiss entire people's experience, entire groups of people, entire whatever. It's a tricky time.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a better philosophy to bring to the world than I think the prevailing one that's out there. Thank you so much for being here, Josh.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
If people want to find more of your work and Plazm's work, where do they go? Where do they look?
Plazm, the plazm.com. You know, that's you can find everything there. There's lots of tendrils too. There's an online magazine where we're putting old content and some new things as well.
And one of your other many kind of side arms of Plazm is the Portland Stamp Company, right?
Yes, my business partner Nico Cortelis is a lifelong collector of stamps. He started collecting perforation machines, and you can imagine that those are a little heavier and larger than stamps, and he suggested that we put them to use. If you ever go to a stamp show, the first question that people ask you is what you collect, and so people collect flowers or countries or various topical things, and so he collects what's called poster stamps, and these are, or they're also referred to as Cinderella stamps or advertising stamps. These are stamps that do not contain monetary postal value. And so what we do with at the Portland Stamp Company is we make custom lick and stick stamps, poster stamps for anybody who wants them. We also make pre-perforated blank sheets, which you can buy those and draw on them directly, or you can run them through any printers, Xerox machine, risograph, that kind of thing. So you can make your own stamps using those, or you can we can do something custom.
It's a really cool way to kind of look at a very familiar shape and object and form and get a chance to experiment with it and do something totally different, which feels so in line with the rest of the work that you've done throughout your career.
Well, it's analog, and as I said, we're analog beings, and it's got a tactile quality to it. These pinhole perforations, this is a traditional style of perforation, and you have to activate it with moisture. You can lick it, you can use a sponge or whatever, and then you stick it on something. Yeah.
Lick it and stick it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you again, Josh.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Sean.
I'm so grateful to have you here. And thank you to the listener. If you enjoyed listening to this show, why not head on over to the service that you use to do so and leave a review or a rating. I know we're collecting actually a lot of ratings on Spotify. So if you're a Spotify listener, you can give us stars there. Also, it would be great if you tell a friend about the show, because I know, word of mouth tends to work better than anything else. You can follow us on social media from our brand new website, dididoThat.design, lovingly handcrafted, which is also where you can find fun images that go along with each and every episode. This is Did I Do That? I'm Sean Schumacher, and as we always say at the end of every single episode,
did I do that?
Thanks so much. Bye. Why don't we do that?
It's up to you. I just I don't want to receive credit for that as an individual. That's a big, important award.
Okay, I will.
That we didn't win. We failed to win that. Yes. But it's an honor to be nominated.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so.
I mean, that's a big one. Oh, you've got the certificate of failure there.
Yes,
too.
I forgot that. So this could, if you wanted to
we can
talk
loop
about
this in
that
somewhere.
If you want to talk about that, we can talk about that.
Yeah,
I figured it's all about failure. I might as well bring my certificate of failure.
It's beautifully done. Lovely seal. What is the story of the certificate of failure?
Well, we did. Nico and I did a workshop, a Plazm workshop at Ben Design one year, and it was called "Come Fail with Us." And so we had a room full of people, and we had designed some exercises to essentially take them out of their comfort zones. And like one of them was drawing with both hands at the same time, for example, or so there were a bunch of these prompts, and we set it up with some context and actually some edits from Nico's On Creativity interview series, because one of the questions he often asks in that series is about the role of failure. So you have different people, whether it's Milton Glaser, Paula Scher, Stephen Heller, talking about the role of failure and mistakes. So that was something that we show a short clip at the beginning. Then we had people, we made them fail for 90 minutes or 2 hours or something, and then at the end of the class we announced everybody each name of the participant, and they came up and people applauded, and we handed them the certificate of failure with their name printed on it, and Nico and I signed these, and we signed in the opposite places. So he signed where my name is, and I signed where his name is.
I didn't even notice that.
And we were in the studio and signing all these before the workshop, and he snuck this one in here with my name on it. and I didn't even know that I didn't even know and after we got through signing them all, he gave me, here's your certificate. So we did design this certificate of failure, and it reads, Joshua Berger is hereby certified to experiment, try new things, fail spectacularly, seek uncertainty, and even fail at being fearless by fully embracing the anxiety that accompanies taking a meaningful risk. So, and I should credit my wife, Tiffany Lee Brown, who wrote this so succinctly.
It's a good bit of copy.
She's also a co-editor for Plazm magazine. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So, certificate of failure. Come fail with us, and we can do yeah. So we do those workshops, but we would do another one somewhere if somebody wanted it.
I would love that. Oh my gosh. That sounds like so much fun. I mean, I really think that that's one of the things that gets talked about the least in this field. And it's so necessary. We're always fucking up something.
Well, yeah, it's what you do with it that makes the difference,
exactly.
Right? It's how do you learn from it, and it's what do you call failure anyway? I mean, it's if you take Thomas Edison as inventing a light bulb, I mean, it's hundreds of times. So do you call all those failures, or do you call it a success in the end? I mean, it's the role of experimentation is vitally important in our work. You can't always know, and you have to be comfortable with unknowing.
Yeah. The outcome may not be tangible for a long, long time as a success.
And the more, in fact, in one of those On Creativity interviews, Milton Glaser talks about this, where the role of design as a designer, as a commercial artist, your role, you need to be successful in your work if you're working with a client.
Yeah.
Right. So success drives repetition, he says, and it takes you out of, it takes you away from learning, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're doing the thing that you already know how to do, you might do it better than anybody else. But if you want to really grow as an artist, you have to be in a place where you have a risk of failure.
Yeah.
And the greatest discovery comes when you're in a place where you don't know the result.
That's so true. I mean, if you're just if you're just spinning your wheels doing something that you've already done, who's that fun for? Who's that interesting for? Failure is the risk of failure, at least, is what makes the design worth making.
Well, yeah. Do you want to be good or exceptional? I mean, if it's good design, great. Good is mediocre. I mean, that's not. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the mayonnaise of design. It's fine. It's not fine. I hate mayonnaise, but I think
I don't know if I mean that last part. It's whatever. You almost strike that. It's not about. It's not about greatness per se. I mean, it's about doing something that you really want to do.
Yeah.
And does it fulfill you? That's the most important thing.
Yes. Yes. That's a great lens. That's a great lens to look through it on. I feel like I said that sentence wrong in some way, but I can't parse what I said. Did I mention I got 2 hours of sleep last night?
No wonder.
I'm not at my most coherent today.